We start with this. I just want to remind everyone of our very generous, few but generous sponsors. So Microsoft, as usual, gives us a very generous donation, and this year, for some reason, Google was more generous than usual. But then we didn't have other sponsors this year. So this is our plan for the evening, and we'll start right away with the Safe TOC presentation.
Okay, oh, there we go. All right. I don't know that that's in presentation mode, but you'll get the idea. So obviously Martin, you're here, correct?
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent. We were introduced yesterday. We're the two assigned advocates for FOCS this year. Just as a recap, this is the sort of charge of our group. We're a group of volunteers working to provide support to anyone who experiences harassment, any kinds of problems in conferences. The advocates are not about punishment or deciding guilt or anything like that, but solely provided as a resource for people who have uncomfortable situations and don't have someone to seek help or advice from. So you'll hopefully see us at most of the theory conferences from here on out. A large number have signed on. We've sort of considering harassment in its broadest sense, and want to talk about a few of the specific points we've been addressing. So this is more just the slide of text of what we're doing. So one thing we wanted to emphasize beyond, again, just having dedicated advocates at each conference, as that one of the goals of this and one of the things that came out in the process of our committee was simply to improve the culture for everybody, and to uncover some not so good stories in our community and to try to reduce that and help those. So part of this is asking every member of the community to be an advocate, and maybe this is something everybody knows, but it's a good thing to remind yourself of and think about as you're attending conferences, both virtual and in person. And some of these techniques, if you witness something that looks uncomfortable, it's easy to join a conversation at a coffee break to cause a distraction and, intervene with a question. If somebody looks upset, offer to help, because especially junior people who tend to have these experiences often don't have the network around them to help support them in these situations. Often it's just a matter of listening if you see something or talk to somebody. If you do witness harassing behaviors, it does help to speak up. So often this is awkward and goes badly sometimes, and well other times. It's a matter of practicing and sort of all of us participating. Diffusing the situation, making a joke, asking a question. There's a lot of ways to interject without forcing a confrontation or making a big deal of it. And part of the goal of Safe TOC is, again, to sort of like whenever you do a hiring committee, it's important to remember the issues and remember our own biases. We are all partners in this conference and want it to be a safe place particularly for junior members of our community. Sometimes this is as simple as cultural differences also. So just raising a discussion, asking a question, and interjecting can be really, really helpful. So in addition to soliciting advocates, which we're always doing, if you're interested in helping out, email one of the four of us on the organizing committee. We'd encourage all of you to a lot of people signed on to a pledge to make theoretical computer science a more inclusive atmosphere. This starts with all of us at conferences and how we interact with each other and help people.
The four of us at the organizing committee, I don't know if that's on the next slide.
It is not, so.
Yuval Rabbani, Sandy Arani, Aaron Chambers, and me. You can reach out to any of us, and we're just the volunteers who help sort of corral the advocates and don't have any really more official role than that, other than just sort of setting up the infrastructures for the advocates. But we are the most likely people to have, therefore, to have any answers to any questions that you have about becoming an advocate.
Martin, did you want to talk about conflict of interest? This
Yes.
was another point.
Yeah, one of the things that we did that the Committee for Safe TOC recommended is author-specified conflicts of interest. This is a mechanism that has been available in other computer science communities for a long time and is more or less new to the theory community. And so we're having growing pains. And so part of what we'd like to do is to educate people. And the growing pains are almost completely, well, they are completely different than the growing pains people predicted. So what's happening with author specified, well, let me just tell you the mechanism. People can say, I have a conflict of interest without saying why towards members of the PC and in some cases towards sub-referees. And then it's up to the PC chair to decide whether they look fine or whether they require a little bit more investigation. And then the advocates go in and have a confidential investigation. I've done them for SODA and FOCS and STOCK, and several people on this meeting have done them for several conferences. And so far, basically, we found 0 dodgy conflict of interest requests. They have basically fallen into the category of, I didn't know person X was person Y's postdoc advisor, or sometimes people think that conflict of interest means if someone likes their work, then they have a conflict of interest because they'll be favorably disposed. And so people are a little too enthusiastic about declaring conflicts of interest about positive bias. And really this mechanism is there to guarantee that anyone can address negative personal, non-professional bias without having to raise a whole investigation. That's what the purpose of these conflicts of interest are. So we encourage people to use these thoughtfully and not to say, so-and-so came up to me at a conference and said they love my work. I have to list them as a conflict of interest in order to be highly scrupulous. That's just not the point. So anyway, this is your educational message about conflicts of interest.
And just to clarify, investigate really just means one of us usually sends an email and offers a phone call or checks in, essentially to put an extra layer in between the PC and the author if they choose not to share details that are confidential. It's not a terribly formal process. So usually this is just an email from one of us. That was really our educational bit here. Thanks for including Safe TOC and FOCS this year.
Well, thank you for the presentation. I'll get back to this. So our next order of business is the local arrangement chair's report. And I guess I have to switch back to you guys.
Yeah, so I'll share my screen. You guys can see it? You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So hi, this is a local arrangements report. So this conference was arranged by the theory group at Duke. So the committee was myself and Kamesh Munagala, then Debmalia Panigrahi, who did most of the finance stuff, Ronga and Ben Rossman. So we had so one of our staff members, Carol Rogers, was the dedicated web page admin. So she created all the nice web pages that you guys have access to. And we have 4 student volunteers, Kirti Anand, Shao Hong Ko, Erin Taylor, and Kangming Wang. And they'll help run the sessions. So in terms of planning, we initially Our initial plan was to co-locate with the TCC conference and run it the same dates, November 16th through 19th, but in Durham, which is where Duke is located. In fact, we signed a contract with the Durham Convention Center, and the contract got signed by IEEE on Jan 23rd, 2020, and we were all very happy. And when I searched now on Jan 24th, 2020, there was like some inkling that something is going to go wrong. And this is a paper published in the Lancet the very next day saying that, you know, there's some coronavirus that might cause a global health concern. And sure enough, here we are. And we had to like cancel the IEEE, the contract with the convention center, and hold the conference virtually. So for the virtual conference, we got a lot of help from the stock organizers, Gautam Kamath, Madhur Tulsiani, and Julia Chuzoy. In fact, we like pretty much copied some of the documents that they sent for the virtual conference, like the Zoom recording and stuff. So we brainstormed various platforms and designs, and finally went with like just having one conference hub, like a web page which has links to everything. We finally decided against doing the conference on Gather and those kind of options. And the registration fees were set in a way to maximize attendance. It was $75 for the authors and $20 for everyone else. IEEE did not want us to set registration rates too low, like make things free and stuff. So this was a compromise solution where everyone was happy. So in terms of registrations, these are the numbers. So they're, USA is the most with 300. I think it's usually this way. All of Europe was 77 and so on. So there were surprisingly few from the Far East. And the Far East includes everything: China, Japan, Korea, Singapore, and so on. Everything was 22. Israel was 19, and India was 17. So in total, it was 478. Those were the number of paid registrants that we have. And if you look by registrant type, we had 131 author registrations. So we required authors to register, and 347 non-authors. And we gave like free registrations to around 30 participants. And among the registrations, roughly half were from students and half from non-students. So those are the local arrangements details. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Let's perhaps thank the local arrangements committee that did a lot of work here.
Thanks.
So let's move on. Well, I have to just move this white arrow to the next item, which is the PC Chair report.
Okay, I will share. Let's see. All right. So first of all, I'd like to thank my terrific committee for all their hard work in reviewing papers and putting this program together. I'm really grateful that they all agreed to serve. And I guess one of the benefits of the virtual format is that all of the session chairs were actually PC members, which usually doesn't happen when you have an in-person conference. So thank you for doing that. A few people I owe a special thanks to. First of all, Yuval Rabbani for, first of all, entrusting me with this job and offering a lot of insight and a wealth of experience with FOCS. Kamesh and Damalia put together a great conference and were really responsive in all matters related to the technical program. So thank you to them. I consulted with a lot of previous PC chairs, both of Stock and FOCS, but other conferences as well. And I learned a lot from those conversations. I owe a special thanks to my old friends, Renate Rubenfeld and David Zuckerman. They answered countless minute questions about how to run a PC. Paul Beam and Madhu were actually members of my committee, and they were sort of my go-to people whenever I ran across a little dilemma that I didn't know how to deal with, which was surprisingly often. So I thank them for their time. And Nicola Morliko was also on the committee, and she had experience with running PC meetings over Zoom and the clusters that I'll tell you about. So she was very helpful in sharing her expertise. Thanks to Shai Halevi, who provided our review and server submission software and the support. So thanks to all of those people. It takes a village to run a conference, and in this case, it takes about 687 sub-referees who shared their time and experience in reviewing papers. So thank you to all of them. A little data about submissions. So we had 399 submissions. We accepted 127 papers. So that includes 3 merged papers. So I guess it was 130 separate submissions that were accepted and 3 were merged, with an acceptance rate of approximately 32.6%. And we can compare that with last year. You'll notice that the submissions are up significantly. So last year was not an anomaly. I don't really have the historical data. Last year was sort of in keeping with previous numbers. So this year was sort of the outlier in that we had a record number of submissions. It will be interesting to see if that was a pandemic related thing, like everyone sat at home and wrote a lot of papers, or if this is a trend that will continue post-pandemic. Despite the fact that we received so many submissions, our acceptance rate was still slightly higher than last year. So last year it was 29%, this year 32.6%. We were strongly encouraged by Yuval and the steering committee to accept more papers, and that was actually a motion that was voted on at the last business meeting last year at FOCS. So we took that seriously, and I think our target was around 110 when we first thought that we were going to have an in-person conference, and 110 comes from the fact that that's sort of an upper bound if you have 3 parallel sessions, just the constraints of a day. You can only take so many papers. When it became clear that it was going to be a virtual format, we considered 110 to 120. And then I finally came back to the steering committee and asked permission to accept even more. And we ended up with 127. So it actually was really helpful to have a target of 110 or 120. But then it was also really helpful to be able to go a little beyond our target too. So in the end, it sort of made a few last minute decisions a little bit easier. So, and we don't think we sacrificed anything in quality in increasing the numbers. We feel like we have a lot of great papers in the conference. So the fact that we had more submissions than expected meant that the PC had more work than expected. When I invited them to join the committee, I projected about 33 papers per PC member, and it ended up being a range from 40 to 46. Now, the reason that it's a range and not an actual single number, is that the pandemic affected different people in different ways. You know, some of my PC members had young children at home and were just not able to be as productive. Others had more time because they, you know, their hobbies and social life was put on hold and they had nothing to do but review papers. So on a confidential basis, I offered to the PC to let me know if people could let me know if they needed a little help and a reduced load, and people could volunteer to take on a few extra papers. So I didn't reveal any of the names, but I did have a handful of saints on my committee who offered to take some extra load. So I'm very thankful about that. Something to consider for the future, the number one reason that someone would turn me down for an invitation to be on the PC was wanting to submit a paper. And this was especially true for people with students who had papers that they wanted to submit. So I understand that, you know, if you have a student that you're planning to submit a paper with, that is kind of an important consideration. I think FOCS is one of the last holdouts of the conferences that don't allow PC members to submit. So that's something we could entertain for the future, but it did make it sometimes hard to get people to agree to serve. So initially, I spent a lot of time agonizing over whether to have an in-person PC meeting or not, which just seems quaint in retrospect. I was sort of encouraged by the steering committee to not. There are obvious cons, it's expensive. I talked to a lot of former PC chairs and asked them whether they felt it was valuable, and uniformly they thought it was. So, and keep in mind, when I was having these conversations, people were contrasting an in-person meeting with a mostly text-based process. Like Zoom meetings weren't really the norm yet. So pros for an in-person meeting is I think you do get a higher level engagement from the PC. You get some calibration across the areas because you have people from your meet as a group. It does build community. And I think there's also sort of an important thing that when you have this in-person meeting, 30 people come away from the meeting with a pretty comprehensive, broad view of the state of the art of theory. And I think that helps to build some intellectual cohesion in the field and prevents us from becoming too splintered or specialized. So if you kind of do this repeatedly over the course of every year, then, did I just lose my, then we tend to understand the field as a whole better. And I think there's value in that. The cons are obviously it's expensive, it's a hassle to travel, there's an environmental cost. And you know, anyone who's served on these PC know that, you know, these 2-day meetings can get pretty harried and sometimes the decisions get kind of rushed. I'm not seeing the chat stuff. So if there's questions popping up in the chat, I can try and see because I'm in full screen.
About PC submissions at stock.
What's that?
There are remarks about PC submissions at stock, and it seems that their compromise is to allow them in odd years, but not.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you how it's done at all the crypto conferences if you are interested.
Well, maybe we should.
This is certainly.
I mean, I think it's certainly something we should consider, but I think maybe, you know, I don't know, Yuval, you want to enter into this discussion right now? We maybe put it on hold.
Tomorrow. I think we can discuss tomorrow.
Yeah. So
I don't know. This is certainly an odd year, Sandy.
Sure enough. All right. So what we ended up doing is we clearly did not have an in-person meeting. We did the usual 2-day of bidding and assignments. We had about a month, 5 weeks of review where people read the papers and did their reviewing, went out for sub-reviews. We had a text-based discussion for the month of June. At the end of that phase, we ended up with 40 papers that were likely accepts. So there was a strong consensus among the reviewers that we should accept it. And then 120 papers in the to discuss category. And we sort of picked those 120 by voting schemes through the review system. So people had tokens and could pick papers. And then we had a series of meetings. The first set of meetings were held over 4 days. And these were clusters of smaller groups of the PC. So we had 6 cluster meetings, 2 hours each. Each cluster meeting was attended by 10 to 12 PC members. And in each of those meetings, we discussed between 15 and 20 papers. Most of the decisions we made in those cluster meetings were final and not revisited with the full committee. There were a handful of sort of borderline papers that we postponed. And then we had 2 full PC meetings over Zoom, each 4 hours. We quickly reviewed the likely accepts that emerged from the discussion phase. So every paper accepted at a conference got discussed at a cluster meeting or the full PC meeting. And then there were about 33 papers that we needed to decide on. They were either borderline, came out of the clusters, or sometimes there were related groups of papers that needed to be discussed as a group. Some papers required some last minute reviews, some additional information. So we dealt with all of those, and we also had a discussion about the awards as well. So that was our process. Let me say a little bit about the clusters, because I think that was sort of the novel part of what we did here. We needed to schedule those meetings before we knew which papers had to be discussed. Okay, so that was a bit of a challenge. And what I ended up doing is I partitioned all of the papers into 6 clusters of 60 to 70 papers, with the understanding that we didn't expect to discuss all 60 to 70. Some would be obviously rejects and some would be clear accepts. So each PC member was assigned to 1 to 3 cluster meetings, depending on how broad their interests were. We got those meetings on the calendar early in the process. And each paper had at least 2 reviewers attending its cluster meeting. Usually all 3 were there. So, and I think people found those cluster meetings to be very productive. So a few pros and cons of this cluster Zoom format against an in-person meeting. Pros, I think cluster meetings, as I just said, were very productive. I think we got a lot of, I think 10 to 12 people is kind of a sweet spot for having a good discussion. Another benefit is that we could spread the meetings over a week. And that really helped a lot because sometimes you don't really, an issue emerges, you need more information about a paper and you don't figure that out until you talk about it. So you have now a few more days to go out and get more information. We had a lot of interesting discussions. It's obviously less costly, time, money, carbon footprint. The cons, you know, I mean, it's more fun to interact in person. Can't beat that. PC members, we did go through as a group those top 40 papers, but you don't get quite the same comprehensive view of the field as you do if you're spending 2 days together all together. And for me, I think this is a significant thing to think about is the overhead in managing the clusters is pretty significant. So I wrote a little program to create the clusters, heuristic, you know, little thing to make, spit them out into spreadsheets. The clusters don't really talk to the review software. So that's another issue that could be worked on. So if it's something that, if this cluster thing is something that we want to continue, I think we should think about trying to get the review software packages to deal with them, to either help make the clusters or manage them in some way, because otherwise it is a lot of overhead. So that's something to be considered for the future if this is something that we want to repeat. I did at the end of this, because it was sort of a novel process, I polled the committee about what they thought. I got 19 out of 29 responses, and I will share a couple of the responses with you. So I asked PC members to compare their experience with the Zoom meetings in the clusters with a full in-person PC meeting. And I asked them from 2 perspectives. One is the quality of the final decisions. And then the other perspective is their experience on the committee. Did they enjoy it? Did they learn a lot? How was it for them? So this first question is in terms of the quality of the decision process, how effective were the Zoom meetings in comparison to in-person meetings? And I think Zoom sort of clearly won on that grounds. No one said that the in-person was better. And then in terms of how much you enjoyed and learned from participating in the program committee, it was about even across the distribution. So I did actually prepare a longer report about this process, about how all the details and logistics. And in that report, I have all of the data from the survey. So I asked the committee all kinds of things about, you know, each individual activity, how worthwhile it was. So if anyone's interested in that report, you can just send me an email and I'd be happy to send it to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy. There are a couple of questions here.
Okay, so I've just stopped sharing so I can now look at them.
Ava asked, pointed out, extra minus PC members learn less about other areas. And Till asked, was the average discussion time per paper around 10 minutes? Question mark.
So the extra minus, Eva, is with the clusters. You don't get quite as comprehensive a view. Is that what you're saying?
I guess what I mean, I often learn from listening to people in other areas debate things with each other, that is hearing multiple opinions. And if you only do the summary statements, that's less educational.
Yeah, so it is, I agree. And it is kind of a balance between the full PC and the text base. So it's somewhere in the middle, but I agree that you don't learn quite as much. Average time per paper around 10 minutes. Maybe a little bit less than that. I would say 6 to 7. We did a quick, you know, someone would present the results in a minute and a half. Someone would present the pros and cons in a minute and a half, and we discussed for a few minutes after that. So, and in the Zoom meetings, in the smaller cluster meetings, that went pretty well. That seemed enough. It was rare that I had to kind of, you know, bang the gong and get people moving on.
Is there time for another question?
Yes, there's all the time in the world.
So if the PC members learn so much more from those 2 days discussing together than attending 4 days a conference, like what is better than just attending the conference and you see the talk from everyone?
Well, I can answer that. Eva can also answer if she wants to, but I think you have these high-level discussions. It's not just about the technical content, but you learn people's values, like what's interesting, what directions they think are important. And so those kind of high-level discussions are really, really interesting, I think. Sometimes the reviews of the paper, you get a better snapshot of the paper than reading the abstract and the intro. So sometimes they just beautifully encapsulate everything that you want to know about the paper. So, you know, so that's what I find kind of interesting. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that.
And then the follow-up question is, of course, can you maybe transport this value to the actual conference where this should take place for all the participants, rather than just the PC, right? I mean, it's nice that the PC learns it, but there are 400 people that attend FOCS apparently.
It's true. Partly is that we're forced to be in the room and we're there, and then once you're there, it's all kind of interesting. So maybe would you take time from your day to have that? But once you've made the commitment to do it, you're going to do it and learn it. So I'm not sure. So
actually, on social science meeting, if I may chime in, they sometimes do a discussant assigned to every paper who has to raise some interesting issues. You know, we would have to take many fewer papers and spend more time on each paper to make room for this. So I'm not sure how that would work, but it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, and I want to say Yuval Filmos just made the valid point that some of this is confidential information that takes place in the PC. So people say things and express opinions that they might not express in a completely public format. From Paul, another negative, individual PC members are somewhat less visible in cluster format. So it's, yeah, so one of the nice things about the PC meetings is that, you know, the junior people kind of get to shine a little bit, and we get a little less of that certainly in the Zoom cluster format.
So shall we continue? Okay, so I guess our next order of business is giving some awards. I'll actually do that through mail. So here we go.
Okay, so I get to announce the award, is that?
You get to announce the awards and then I can send them.
All right, so we are first of all presenting the MACTI Award for the best student authored paper, and we had a sole award winner this year. Rahul Ilango won for his paper, The Constant Depth Formula and Partial Function Version of MCSP Are Hard. So congratulations, Rahul.
Rahul, can you just present yourself?
Oh, hi, I'm here. Thank you very much for the award.
And here you're getting it.
Oh, awesome. Should I share my screen?
You...
I think best not.
Okay, then next we have the Best Paper Awards. So here's the first one of those.
Okay, so the first Best Paper Award winner is for an equivalence between private classification and online prediction. The paper is by Mark Bunn, Roy Livney, and Shai Moran. So congratulations.
Here, we'll send that as well.
I don't know if the authors can.
So the previous authors, are any of them here?
Do you want to, they could give a little shout out.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm here. Thank you very much for the award.
You're welcome.
Offer a virtual handshake. Thank you.
All right, the next Best Paper Award is Edge-Weighted Online Bipartite Matching by Matthew Farbach, Zhiyi Wang, Wenju Tao, and Vortiza Zadamogadam. And congratulations.
Yeah, if you're here, shout.
Yep, thank you. Thank you for the award. Thank you for the recognition.
Thank you.
That one went
one more.
well,
okay,
and
this is the third Best Paper Award, a new minimax theorem for randomized algorithm by Shalev Ben David and Eric Blay. And congratulations. Thank you.
So are you
Virtual
guys?
handshake.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
And I guess that's it from the PC. So thank you. Let's thank the PC and the PC chair for their hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, where are we? So I guess we did this. Let's see. I'll just skip over. Already did. Here we go. I think we're here now. So this is my report. Just to remind everyone, because this is always confusing, FOCS is sponsored by the IEEE Computer Society Technical Committee on Mathematical Foundations of Computing, or TCMF. I am TCMF chair, and by virtue of that position, also the conference general chair. First of all, I'd like to thank all the numerous people that were involved in this very challenging conference because it was virtual. It was more challenging than usual. So Kamesh Munagala and Malia Panigrai and the rest of the local arrangements committee, Carol Rogers, who did an excellent job administering the conference website, Sandy Irani that just spoke, the PC chair, and the entire PC that did a wonderful job selecting the committee, Aaron Chambers and Martin Farage Colton, who volunteered to serve as Safety UC advocates for the conference, Nina Balkan and Sasha Sherstov, the tutorials co-chairs. So we were worried that we will have no workshops and tutorials, and luckily they managed something that was, I think, accepted by many people as very productive. The tutorials day that we had on Friday. So just a remark here, as some of you may know, the tutorials co-chairs serve for 2 years and they rotate. So Nina is leaving us. She served for 2 years. This is her 2nd year. And Sasha is going on for FOCS 2021. And someone will join him, yet to be determined. I'd like to thank also Shankwa Tang, the vice chair of TCMF, and the entire steering committee that is helpful in long-term planning of FOCS. Alan Fries, who served as the Knuth Prize Committee chair, and the entire committee for choosing the Knuth Prize winner, Cynthia Dwork, who gave the Knuth Prize talk yesterday. Paul Beam and the Test of Time Award Committee for their hard work that we will soon discuss. And of course, all the participants, the authors, the organizers of tutorials, the speakers at those tutorials, and everyone that is here for making this FOCS happen. Now, what was new this year? Well, FOCS and TCC are co-located this year, meaning that they're both on the web, I guess. But they were supposed to be physically co-located this year. This is a one-time partnership. We may repeat it later, but it's not going to happen next year. And we're definitely looking for more partnerships like this. So some smaller satellite conference focused on a more specific area of theoretical computer science that will bring in larger numbers of a particular sub-community that we care about. And we can do more than one of these. So if you have any thoughts or ideas or suggestions, you're welcome to share them. The most important difference that we had this year is, of course, COVID-19. The conference is virtual. It poses all sorts of challenges, but also lots of opportunities. So we have much higher participation numbers this year than usually. The limits on the numbers of papers accepted were removed. So we already voted last year on setting the number higher than 90, setting it to be 110. And as Sandy noted, basically all barriers were removed after, I think, a few rounds of negotiation. So the bounds went up, and then eventually I decided that there's no reason to do any bounds because we can have as many parallel sessions as we like this year, or talks as short as we like as well. Now, you may remember from previous FOCSes that we have a relatively new Distinguished Service Award this year that is given at the discretion of the steering committee. We gave it twice in a row. Paul Beam was the first recipient and Sandy Irani was the second. This year, I guess the steering committee was somewhat lazier and didn't find a worthy. So the steering committee is supposed to give it whenever they find a worthy person to give it to. People in the community can nominate people to this award. So you can contact any person on the steering committee and let them know that someone deserves this prize in case the steering committee fails to notice it. So you can do it anytime. There's no, there are no rules for this award. It's given at the discretion of the steering committee. And the other thing that we will discuss in tomorrow's business meeting further is that TCMF and FOCS decided to participate in the TCS Insularity Task Force, which is an initiative that started by CATCS. What is CATCS and what it does will be presented later today. So this is it, not much is new, mostly the virtual format. And now our next order of business is the FOCS Test of Time Awards being presented for the second year in history. Sorry, I need to say one more thing here. So about the FOCS Test of Time Award, it's decided by a committee of 6 members that serve for 2 years, and half of the committee rotates out each year. So this year the committee was chaired by Paul Beam, and the other members were Uri Fege, Anna Carlin, Ishai Mansour, Claire Mathieu, and Luca Trevisan. The committee is appointed towards February by the steering committee. The eligible papers are in 3 categories: 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and 30 years ago. Nominations are not actually needed for those years. So this year it was 2010, 2000, and 1990. The expected number, or let's say the regular number of awards is 1 paper per category, but the committee is entitled to award up to 3 papers in each category and even deviate from the target years. But this thing requires specific justification and nominations of these papers, which could be done by the committee members themselves. So it's not such a serious obstacle. The main criterion is impact, substantial, lasting, or broad, relevant impact. So I'll now hand over the floor to Paul Beam to present the awards. Paul?
Yep. So we'll be there in a second, just sharing my screen. Okay. So yeah, so as you've all said, the committee was myself, Uri Feiga, Anna Carlin, Ishai Mansour, and Claire Mathieu. And we actually did send out a call for nominations as well, with the deadline in May, and we worked over the summer. Again, Zoom allows that even when we're 10 hours of time zone apart. We had had various options about choosing papers that were, earlier, not in the designated years. And I'm going to go through the papers in from 1990 forward, so from the beginning. So for the 1990 awards, there were 3 papers. So we took advantage of the option, and these are 3 papers that are closely related, but really have had extraordinary impact. And as you can see from the page numbers in the proceedings, these were really identified as highlight papers early on. They were consecutive as the first 3 papers in the conference. Each produced really remarkable advances. And I will go through the citations for each one separately, but I just thought I'd show them all first. So the first is by Karsten Lund, Lance Fortnow, and Howard Karloff and Noam Nissan, Algebraic Methods for Interactive Proof Systems. So I'm going to read the citation. This paper produced a breakthrough that fundamentally changed our understanding of the power of interactive proofs, showing that efficient interactive proofs exist for all languages in the polynomial time hierarchy. Given previous simulations that had shown how to remove rounds in interactive proofs efficiently, and Oracle results that have suggested that the existence of efficient interactive proofs, even for co-NP, was unlikely, this power was a surprise. Its core innovation is a simple and beautiful but powerful algebraic method for interactive verification of the value of the permanent Boolean matrices, and hence any problem in sharp P, inspired by previous work on self-testing and self-correction. The use of algebraic methods for verification protocols is also a core part of subsequent precise characterizations of the power of interactive and multi-prover interactive proofs, as well as the original proofs of later characterizations of NP in terms of probabilistically checkable proofs. And so we're going to do a tag team. So here is their certificate, and Yuval will go the presentation.
Sure. So I guess those people who are here, please make yourself noted. Karsten Lund, Lance Fortnow, Howard Karloff, and Noam Nissan. Are you guys here? I know some of you are.
I'm here.
Yes,
I'm here.
Hi. So
Hi.
Congratulations. And I'm going to mail you, I mean, this you won't see because I don't want to flip sharing screens, but I'm going to mail you your certificate right now. So here we go. So you just got the certificate, hopefully by mail. And congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Paul, back to you.
In case you don't see it, check your spam folder.
I'm sorry?
Okay, so the second winner is Adi Shamir's paper, IP equals P-space. This paper settled the complexity of interactive proof systems and in a very surprising way. While it is rather straightforward that IP is included in P-space, this paper showed that the trivial inclusion is tight, and IP equals P-space. The proof technique applies a very elegant algebraic extension of Boolean first-order logical formulas and uses it to show the equivalence of the two models. It is truly amazing that the entire paper fits in 5 pages, a true testament to the extreme elegance of the proof technique. The paper highlights the importance of interactive proof systems for understanding basic concepts in computational complexity. The continued research in this direction has led later to important breakthroughs in our understanding of the hardness of computation. So take it away. Congratulations. Take it away, Yuval.
Yeah, so Adi, before actually I switched to Adi, I forgot to mention that you guys have a chance to say something if you want to. Also the previous winners. In case you have something to tell the community, I know that Adi wanted to say a couple of words. So Adi, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. So actually,
so congratulations first.
Thank you.
I need to mail your certificate and then you can speak. That's it.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the committee. I wanted to tell you very briefly the story of how this result came into being. It's a story I never told before, and I think there is a lesson in it. So it all started in '85 when Goldwasser, Micali, and Karlov invented the notion of IP.
Rakoff.
Sorry?
Rakoff. Well, not Karlov, Rakoff.
Rakoff, sorry. And initially it was, it seemed like a very weak notion. You could prove graph isomorphism, non-isomorphism, quadratic residuosity, but that's more or less all. And a year later, Goldreich, Micali, and Wigderson suddenly showed that all of NP is included in IP. And the way I learned about it, you have to remember that in the mid-'80s, email was very weak and seldom used. So I got a phone call from Professor Shimon Even, who gave me one bit of side information. He said that he heard that the group at MIT had just shown that all of NP can be proven with interactive proofs. Now, with that single bit of extra information, I looked at the problem again after struggling over the question myself for over a year. And within half an hour, I came up with another proof using the NP-complete problem of knapsacks and devising an interactive proof for it. So I, of course, kicked myself for not thinking about this before. And I promised that in the future, I'll always think that someone had just proven an important result and then try to prove it myself. And the chance came towards the end of 1989 when I met Avi Wigderson, and he told me that Noam Nissan had just shown that the permanent problem, which is sharply complete, can be proven by an interactive proof. It was a huge jump above NP. And I immediately said, okay, the next obvious step is to go all the way to P-space, which was the upper bound. And I said, okay, let's assume that somebody had proven it. how did it do it? And I worked backward. I said, okay, let's take a complete problem, quantified Boolean expressions, and let's assume that this can be shown by interactive proofs. And going backwards, within a few weeks, I managed to come up with the result. So the lesson is that sometimes just the conviction that the result is correct is enough in order to find a proof. So now we should all think about somebody had just shown that NP is different than P, and now go ahead and try to prove it.
Thank you, Adi.
Thanks.
Okay, so the third winner of the 1990 Test of Time award is by Latsi Babai, Lance Fortnow, and Karsten Lund. Non-deterministic exponential time has two prover interactive protocols. I'll read citations. So greatly extending previous work on interactive proofs for P-space problems, the authors show that NEXT can be characterized as a class of languages that emit membership proofs in a model in which two communicating provers interact with a probabilistic polytime verifier. Equivalently, the authors show that NEXT can be characterized as a class of problems that emits polytime probabilistically checkable proofs, PCPs, of exponential size that can be checked in polynomial time by a probabilistic verifier that has oracle access to the proof. Several ideas and techniques introduced in the paper have subsequently become foundational in the theory of probabilistically checkable proofs and its application to inapproximability. These include the idea of encoding a small witness using a low-degree polynomial, in this case a multilinear one, the development of testing procedures to distinguish valid encodings from oracles that are far from valid encodings, and the development of self-correction procedures that simulate access to a valid encoding given an oracle that is close to a valid encoding. Again, here is the certificate, and congratulations. So Yuval.
Thank you. So Latsi, Lance, and Karsten, again, I guess
yes.
Some of you are here. Hi. So as before, if there's anything you want to say, floor is yours. And I'll send your certificate in the meantime.
And so, yeah, it's very exciting, particularly, for me and my colleagues back at University of Chicago when we did this. I just remember this just being a very exciting time, and results are going back and forth. Lassi Baba wrote this great article, if you track it down, email and the power of interaction, on how emails got exchanged and how these proofs kind of went around. We heard about Norman's results. We showed this about interactive proofs. We sent it out to lots of people. Then Adi, extended our stuff to get to IP equals P space. And then I said, well, then let's try to get next. Because because we had this upper bound for MIT being next, and just try to close it down. And we had some ideas. It took a while to get it all worked out, especially the low degree test. And once you just it's just a really exciting time back in 89, 90, when to just have this place you're trying to get to, and having, with the first paper, when Karsten walks to my office and says, why doesn't this work? And it just does work, and it was an amazing time. And so I'm glad we have this opportunity to kind of look back and just remember those exciting times back then.
Well, may I add a few words to this?
Yes, of course, yeah. Of course.
Okay, so yes, so I mean, it is really beautiful to look back at the time when our hair was of a different color, and really the excitement was palpable, and we felt that the University of Chicago, for at least a brief period, became somehow the center of attention. But then I'd like to jump forward to 2020, So, okay, so it was mentioned that that paper had a low degree test, but actually low degree test came from Blum, Luby, and Rubinfeld half a year earlier, which has initiated the property testing area. And what we did was a different thing. It was a low individual degree test. So every variable had a low degree. And then subsequent developments in PCPs replaced that with a low degree test, and that allowed the number of queries to go down from polylogarithmic to constant. And so, well, I was somewhat surprised to see that there is a recent body of work in quantum computing, culminating in the spectacular result that quantum MIP is actually RE. So the halting problem can be proven by two entangled quantum provers. So a centerpiece of that is now the quantum soundness of the classical individual low degree protocols. So there is a 2020 September, just a few weeks ago, there is a 120-page paper by the authors of this result, G. Natarajan, Vidic, Wright, and Yuan, that bears the title Quantum Soundness of the Classical Low Individual Degree Test. So that much. So it seems that the concept is still alive.
Yes. Thank you, Lotzi, and congratulations to you and Lance and all the other 1990 winners as well. So yes, indeed, even in 1990, I don't think that the program committee could have realized how influential these papers would be over time. So I'm going to move forward to 2000, and the 2000 FOCS Test of Time Award winner is a single paper by Tim Roughgarden and Eva Tardosh, How Bad is Selfish Routing? And, oh, sorry. So I'll read the citation. So this paper is one of the founding papers in the area of algorithmic game theory. The basic question the paper addresses is stated succinctly in the title of the paper. What is the worst case ratio between the average latency experienced by the combined traffic of multiple selfish users in equilibrium when each user chooses the path that minimizes their own latency given the path selected by other users, and the average latency in the globally optimal latency minimizing routing? In other words, it studies the so-called price of anarchy of selfish routing, a notion which had been introduced just a year earlier by Elias Koutsoupias and Christos Papdemiciou. Roughgarden and Tardis were able to show that in a general multi-commodity flow setting, where the latency on each edge is an affine function of the amount of flow on that edge, the price of anarchy is at most 4/3, and that this bound is tight. Furthermore, they showed that for any set of latency functions, the average latency in Nash equilibrium is never worse than the optimal latency in a network sending twice as much traffic. This provides theoretical support for the common practice of over-provisioning a network with extra capacity. The proofs of the results in this paper are elegant and general, yet simple and accessible. Moreover, they are surprising. Both results imply that the loss of social welfare due to selfish behavior is not that great in these settings. For these reasons, this paper served to popularize and showcase their significance and centrality of studying the inefficiency of equilibria. In so doing, the paper played a major role in inspiring both the trajectory and the explosive growth in research in algorithmic game theory, leading to the development of a rich and valuable literature. So congratulations, Tim and Eva.
Tim, Eva, are you guys here?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much for the award. We are very appreciative.
Well, thank you for writing the paper.
Let me just say a few things, if that's okay.
Sure.
Sure.
Quick, yeah. So yeah, thanks to the committee. Obviously, it's a huge honor to get this award. It's also just an honor to share it with my PhD advisor, Eva Tardosh. I have very, very fond memories of the period when we were working on this paper together. I also want to thank Ilias Koutsoubias and Christos Papadimitriou. They defined the concept of the price of anarchy just the year before. And indeed, Christos sort of explicitly encouraged Dave and I to work on this problem. And then finally, just a quick anecdote, which was just about the experience of attending FOCS 2000 as a young grad student, because it was only my second conference talk I'd ever given, and the audience was much, much bigger than it was for the first conference talk. So I was like paralyzed with fear. But you know, as it is today, you know, the TCS community is just, you know, as nice as could be. As soon as I gave the talk, there were senior members of the committee coming up to me and making positive comments and making me feel welcome. So it's also just, it was a great introduction to, I think, just the character of the TCS community.
So maybe I want to add one comment on people to thank for. So Tim and I were spending the year in Berkeley when this happened. And I want to thank the Berkeley theory lunch, or whatever the name of the lunch seminar was. And in particular, Leonard Shulman, who presented the brace paradox as a cool thing to work on. And we instantly like, oh, this is really cool. We should work on this. So, you know, we owe a lot of thanks to Leonard, to Christos in particular, and other people in the Berkeley group that we had long discussions with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's thank them again.
Yes, so yes, congratulations again.
Thank you.
So our final award is the FOCS Test of Time Award for 2010. And this goes to a paper by Andreas Björklund, Determinant Sums for Undirected Hamiltonicity. And I will read the citation. So determining whether an undirected graph G as a Hamiltonian cycle is well-known NP-hard problem, in a special case of the classic traveling salesperson problem. It has long been known that on graphs with n vertices, the problem can be solved in time O star 2 to the n, either by using dynamic programming or by using the inclusion-exclusion principle. For the latter algorithm, polynomial space suffices. Breaking the order 2 to the n barrier was a well-known open problem. This paper breaks that barrier, provides a randomized algorithm that finds a Hamiltonian cycle, if one exists, in expected time min of the O of 2 to the n minus, O star of 2 to the n minus I, and 1.657 to the to the n, and polynomial space, where I denotes the size of the maximum independent set. Moreover, using self-reducibility, the algorithm solves the TSP problem on instances with integer edge lengths, paying a multiplicative factor W in the running time, where W is the sum of the edge lengths. The algorithm is a tour de force in the use of algebraic techniques. It draws inspiration from algorithms developed for the K-path problem, which is a parameterized version of the Hamiltonian path problem, and also from earlier work of the author on other problems. It introduces several new ideas, such as reduction of Hamiltonicity to a labeled Hamiltonicity problem on a graph of fewer vertices, and counting with cancellations, weighted cycle covers in this new graph, while using the determinant for this purpose. The paper is a testimony to the high level of sophistication achieved in the design of exact algorithms. So congratulations to Andreas.
Andreas, are you here? Andreas?
Just unmute.
Andreas? Is he here?
It's
well, anyway, I'll send him the certificate.
Seems not to be present.
I'm sorry?
Seems not to be present. You can search the list.
I see. So he's not here.
Or maybe under a different name.
Possibly, yeah. Well, anyway, congratulations, Andreas, whether you're here or not.
Okay, I think we're done. I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Paul. And thank the whole committee for their work, which is not easy.
Well, it's wonderful to have such outstanding papers to talk about and discuss. It's tremendously inspiring.
That's good to hear. Okay, so now we proceed with, so we've already voted on FOCS 2021 last year. We do that 2 years ahead of time. So we'll vote on FOCS 2022 tomorrow at the business meeting. And just briefly, I'll mention what's going on with FOCS 2021 in one slide. So I'll remind you, the location that we chose is Denver. The current team, which is still being assembled, so the local arrangements chair is Alexandra Kola from University of Colorado at Boulder. The PC chair now officially announced as Nishit Vishnoi. Nishit, are you here? Nishit?
Hi, you all. I'm here. Thank you so much.
So Nishit is here. Alexandra has to teach right now, so unfortunately she couldn't be here. I mentioned the workshop co-chair, so Sasha is continuing for another year. Sasha, are you around? I don't think I saw him, but anyway, Sasha is continuing and there will be another one. And of course, under the dark cloud of COVID-19, we have to discuss our options, and we're going to discuss them during the business meeting tomorrow. So we will need to discuss various planning options and how we proceed with them. And just if you're a little bit confused about the photos here, so from left to right, it's Denver and the Denver area, then Alexandra, then Nishith, and then Sasha. So this is so far what I have to say about FOCS 2021. There's a question. Denver, yay Denver. Okay. Oh, what did I do? It's something bad, right? Stop sharing. Okay, here we go. Now the traditional NSF presentation. Funda?
I'm here.
Are you here?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Great. So, I'll stop sharing and you can start sharing.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see everybody, even though it's virtual. So I'm going to try to keep this short, but I'll give the usual spiel and I'll alert you to a few funding opportunities if I can manage to share my screen.
You should be able to do that.
So I think, okay. So, are you able to see my slideshow? Yes, yes. Okay. Okay, so well, thanks for giving me the chance to speak. This is from Algorithmic Foundations. It's me and Tracy and Jack Snoying that you might remember from a few years ago. Is back at AF. So here is the chart. We have sort of a new assistant director for SAIS. Margaret Martinosi has started a little bit a few months ago. still fairly new, and under SIZE, there are 4 different groups. And of course, Algorithmic Foundations is in CCF. Our division director is Rance Cleveland. And we have OAC and CNS and IIS. Your main target mostly is going to be CCF, but sometimes we do see AF related proposals in those other groups as well. So don't just dismiss them. And sometimes things get paneled between in multiple directorates or groups. So, okay, let me see. Okay, I'm somehow unable to, oh, here we go. Okay, and this CCF, Rance Cleveland director, Tiaga Nandagopal is the deputy director. You might or might not have dealt with them. And of course, Algorithmic Foundations were here. There are 3 different groups. There's FET, CIF, and SHF. Again, AF related work does appear in these groups as well, sometimes in addition to AF, sometimes instead of AF. So these are, again, possible targets for AF-related proposals. And the core programs are, there are a couple new things. So here is the new solicitation. You can look up everything in there, the NSF 20-591. And the most important thing, and things are slowly coming in, that smalls, which are up to 500K, there are no deadlines now. So you can submit your smalls whenever you want, and we would still like to return, just finish processing within 6 months. Just was, oh, what did I just give me just 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So let me see. Okay, so can you still see it? Yes. So we always get the question, when is the best time to submit? And there is no good answer. Stuff just trickles in, and once we have enough, we will hold a panel, and then stuff will trickle in some more. So an inevitable result of that will be, before, when everything came together, we would sort things by topic and hold panels, which had 1, 2, maybe 3 topics that would be related to each other. Now, as we do panels, as we receive proposals, the content of a panel is going to be more diverse. So when you're writing your smalls, that means that it's a good idea to write them for a broader audience, because the panel is going to have a broader range. So chances are somebody who is not, or multiple people who are not in your immediate area will be reviewing your proposal. I'll remind again that quantum computing and computational biology is now not in AF, but in FET cluster. But if you have any questions, if you have any doubts about where your proposal should go, just contact us. We'll be happy to look at your summary, have a conversation with you. In fact, a proposal can be paneled in multiple panels, and you could choose a primary and secondary program as you're submitting. And then there's a discussion that happens behind closed doors that it might be paneled even on more panels. So we're also trying to find a good place for the proposal at NSF. So for mediums, the deadline has just passed. Again, a reminder that since the medium submissions aren't that many, medium panels tend to be diverse in terms of topic. So try to write for a broad audience, and same goes for career and CRI as well. There is a new solicitation for CRI, which is this thing in green, that the goals of CRI, they have been clarified. So it's not a means for getting some funding before as you're writing your career. it's for people, it's meant for people who do not have sufficient startup funds so that they can get started on their career, on their research. So that means that if you have a reasonable amount of startup funding or access to other funds, just go apply for the career. It's not too early. It's never too early. So there's no notion that first you should get a CRAI and then you should get a career. That's not the case. And both of them, again, you should try to write for a broad audience. So some programs that you might be interested in. So tripods, this you probably heard enough about it. It combines theoretical computer science, math, statistics, EE. And there are two phases to it. Phase one is a starting grant, a small one. And then phase two is a large multi-million-dollar institute. So right now, you can't apply for the phase one, but you can apply for a phase two. Eventually, there's some time for that. But you have to have a phase one grant to be able to apply for a phase two. So phase one, there are 15 institutes or proposed institutes that have a phase one grant now. So in order to apply for a phase two, you need to join forces with one of these 15 institutes, and they're encouraged to grow. So there's an opportunity there to just jump in the middle of the action and skip the phase one and go directly for a phase two. So that's tripods. There's PPOS, which is in some sense a continuation, though it's different, of the SPX. Some of you might have had an SPX or might have applied. So this is intended to join together researchers that deal with the entire stack. So there's theory, there's all kinds of systems, architecture, there's applications, there's big data, cloud, all kinds of things in there. There are two different types of grants. Again, one is a planning grant, which is small. One is a large, which is, again, a multi-million-dollar grant. And you can apply for both. The deadline is coming up. For this one, we have given out some planning grants, and there are some theoreticians who have them. But you do not need to be part of a planning grant to be able to apply for a large. You can apply for a large directly. AI institutes, again, up this year, of course, these are very large grants. There are multiple teams listed in the solicitation, and the second one is advances in optimization. This is the one that might be of interest to the AF community. And there's always SATSI, Secure and Trustworthy Cyberspace, which doesn't have deadlines, so you're welcome to apply for that anytime. Other than that, if you want to work with undergraduates, either REU supplements or REU sites. So REU supplements are, if you have a grant, you can ask for a supplement to employ a couple undergrads to do research with them, and REU site is on a larger scale. Both of them are very good, very helpful and satisfying, especially during days of COVID, where undergrads are finding it difficult to get research opportunities. This will be, if you would do that, that would be great. It would be a great help. And it's also a very good method, a very good means for getting underrepresented groups to do research with you. So this is a wonderful thing. And AF, we always need more AF projects. Last year, essentially, whoever asked for one got one. So for especially the younger crowd, what's a good thing to do if you want to be a successful proposal writer? Be a panelist, I guess. There's a little bit of self-interest there. We're always looking for panelists, but it's very good. It's a very helpful thing to see how the review process works. So we look for novelty, creativity, transformativity, if that's a word. High risk reward is not necessarily something that's required, but it's not, if your proposal is high risk, and high reward and with no guarantee of success, but a good likelihood NSF is open to that. When you're writing your proposal, it should be understandable by the entire panel. So don't go too technical. This is something people complain about all the time. And when you're writing about your previous work, it's very important to draw a line where it stops and where the new work is going to start. So what's been done, what hasn't been done, what's been funded, what you're asking to be funded. A proposal written as a laundry list of problems always gets criticized for that. So it's important to have a coherent theme to talk about, focuses, foci, themes, and then make conjectures and talk about how your ideas about how to attack these problems. And broader impacts are always important. People care, NSF cares a lot about them, the reviewers care a lot about them. So it's not just something that you add onto the end of your proposal. And it's important to talk about what you've done and what you're going to do. And again, make the difference, clarify the difference between the two. The plans should be explicit, how you're going to test whether your plans have been successful. Two questions that people ask all the time: do they have to relate to the research topic? And the short answer is no. Your broader impacts can be completely different for your research topic. People write things like, I teach chess to kindergartners, and that doesn't, unless your project is on chess, that's not related to what you're proposing, and that's perfectly fine. And novelty is also, is not required. You can be very effective. Your broader impacts can be very, very effective. You can be, you might be doing some really important and needed work, but it might be just very, very standard, very boring stuff, but that's perfectly fine. Being effective is the key. And novelty, if it's novel, it's interesting, people will write comments about it and will appreciate it, but it's not required by any means. So community engagement, please, please, please. We always need more panelists, and many of you here, you've heard from me many, many times. I'm just constantly bugging people. So your proposals are being reviewed by panelists, so be a panelist, pay back to the community. It's give and take. And this is all give and take within the community. So it's very important. Organize workshops, and NSF will be happy to fund workshops. Go to new areas. So NSF will be happy to help you explore the boundaries of what's known or what are the relevant topics. If you hear about any exciting research, any big breakthrough, let us know. If you have complaints about NSF processes, please let us know. Example, people are using research.gov. Some people are having a great time with it, some people aren't. So if you have any suggestions or comments there, just drop me a line and I'll be happy to listen to you. And of course, NSF always needs, next page is going to talk more about this, program officers and division directors. Please, please, please. I'm doing this, I'm a rotator, so please do it. It's actually fun. It's a good job. And we're always open. Just drop us an email, request a meeting. It's actually super easy now because we're Zooming all the time. If you have any questions about your proposal, about NSF, about any process, anything, any comments, any complaints, any suggestions. If you have a complaint, it would be good to have a suggestion so we could have an idea how to fix your complaint. If you know of NSF supported research that you'd like us to highlight, or at least you'd like us to know about, please let us know. It'll be great. You can brag about it. Hopefully we can brag about it, and it'll be great because we can promote AF within NSF if you do this. If you hear about any important new results, again, we use these. It's not only for us to read and go, oh, that's wonderful research, but it would make a good case for AF within NSF. And these are especially important. These are COVID days. We're all on Zoom. We don't do things face to face. So it'll be great to hear from you. So that's it. So thank you. Oh, that's not it. The most important one. AF is, of course, always looking for program directors. But right now, we're especially in the middle of a search for a program director. So these are rotator positions for 1 to 3 years. They're great. You get a chance to have some say on NSF policy and also hear and see how these things work. So it's a service to the AF community. And these days, we're all working from home. Who knows for how long things are going to well, obviously, at least until March, I think. And then after that, I mean, we have this moving target and it's always 3 months ahead, but we haven't been able to catch up with it. So for quite some time, I suspect. So, so if you would like to be a program director, there is the added sort of ease of doing it that right now all program directors are remote, so you wouldn't have to come and live in Washington. So that might make things a little bit easier logistically. And the position is 1 to 3 years, a 1-year commitment, renewable 3 times. So it's not a huge commitment, and we really need your help in this. So thank you very much for listening to me. Here is the obligatory credits page. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them once I close this.
Thank you, Funda. Any questions? You can also take them offline with Funda.
Yeah, drop me an email if you need to hear more about anything. Right, thank you.
Thank you, Funda. So the last order of business is Shuchi Chawla will talk about CATCS. And I just remind you that tomorrow we have the actual business meeting where we debate and discuss issues. So please show up.
Okay, thanks Yuval, and thanks everyone for sticking around till the very end. So I'm representing CATCS, which is the Committee for the Advancement of Theoretical Computer Science. This is a committee that was put together by the SIG Act several years back, I think about 15 years by now. And this is our current membership. We are basically a group of volunteers who work on behalf of the theory community and carry out outreach and advocacy and general support type of business. You can find out more about our activities on our blog, the Theory Matters blog. And this website has a bunch of useful resources for the community. It has an event site, a job site, various kinds of advice of all sorts, funding opportunities, etc. We also have a mailing list, which is a very, very low volume mailing list. We usually send out an email once a year or twice a year when we have some activities to announce. I want to mention one recent or ongoing activity. Yuval already mentioned one of these, the task force on the insularity of stock and FOCS. Another recent event we held was a visioning workshop that we held this summer. This was an online event. Some of you might remember a visioning activity from back from 2008. So this was meant to follow up on that. It was a a big event attended by almost 80 people. So I'm very thankful to everybody who participated. It was a great success in terms of the discussions that happened there. And we are currently working on a report based on this event. This will be a multi-page write-up of sort of future exciting directions in TCS research. And this is really targeted towards funding agencies primarily, not towards the community. The report, the intention is not to tell the community what to work on, but rather to inform various funding agencies of all the exciting work that's happening in TCS and is expected to come out of this community in the next 10 years or so. This is intended as a way to spur more funding within TCS. And a shorter version of this, a 3-page white paper came out. This was a part of a series that the CCC does every 4 years. It's intended for the new incoming Biden administration. This is a preview of that. This is available on the CCC website, and it basically makes the case for funding within, basic theory research. That's the goal of this. And we have a longer report. It's going to come out in another couple of months or so. We are also going to have a bunch of very nice posters to go along with it. And here's just a preview of the kind of posters that we are hoping to put out with this. These are also along the lines of the ones that the 2008 workshop generated. And these will then be available for the community to use as anybody would like, and we will share these with the various funding agencies. So that's about it. And if you have any suggestions for future projects or you'd like to volunteer for something, do get in touch with any of us, but specifically with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Shuchi. And I guess this is about it. Yes.
I just have a question for Shuchi. I was just trying to search for the white paper on the CCC website, and I didn't find it linked there. So maybe it exists, but isn't yet linked in. So
yeah, so I should put a link on the Theory Matters blog, but let me also post a link right here in the chat window.
Thanks. That'd be great. That's great.
You.
That's good. Okay, so I guess this part of the business meeting is adjourned. We will continue tomorrow with stuff that needs to be discussed and possibly voted on.